If you're broke or basically financially bankrupt, this video is for you, particularly if you're in your older years. I'm 52 as of the making of this video. I'm making this in December of 2024. This is not like my other videos. I created a YouTube channel about, I want to say, a year ago, maybe more. This video is going to be very different. I'm going to try not to edit it too much, and I've got some notes here in front of me. I'm going to do my best to walk through it because I originally created my YouTube channel to help people get out of debt. I also had some credit card videos to help you use them, get rid of your credit card debt, but also use them to gain things like points and miles. And I'll get to why, because I was trying to save money myself. So again, the reason I made my YouTube channel was to help people get out of debt in various ways because I had to do that myself. I literally had to start my life completely over, or at least that's how it felt, financially and otherwise. So I'm going to talk briefly about how I got there. It was through a divorce. This video has nothing to do with whether or not you're a man, whether or not you're a woman. It's about a situation, whether it be a divorce or an illness or whatever, got you to the point where you have to basically start your life over. Financially broke. I found myself to be less than zero. So did I have money? Yes. But did I have debts? Yes. After going through divorce, I had less stuff than I had debts. So if I sold all my stuff and I paid off my debts, I'd be less than zero. It is a horrible situation to find yourself in. And I am now 6 years since that situation. So I thought by explaining how I got there and how I got almost completely out of it and got myself back on my feet, I thought maybe the process I went through would help people. Because all my videos are about, here's how you take care of this, or here's how you take care of that, or here's a different method for this or a different method for that. Well, it's one thing for someone, maybe a financial advisor, to say, here's how you get out of credit card debt. It's another thing for someone to say, you know what, here's what I had to do to get out of it. Matter of fact, I was broke and I had nothing. I was essentially bankrupt at 46 years of age and had my marriage fall apart, and I had to completely come back from zero. And I'm going to explain how I got there and then what I did to get out of it, in the hopes that you'll realize that there's probably more people in these sort of situations than you may think. And while everyone's circumstances are different, oftentimes we find ourselves at the same result, which is we got nothing and we got to start over. And I'll tell you something, it's hard when you look back. And let me just say, from my perspective, everything's going to be from my perspective, what I went through. I hope it relates to you in one way or another and it can help you. I always liked to play sports when I was younger. I liked to go to the gym, and I did for a long time. I like to try to eat right, try to stay in shape. I've always had either my own business or I've been involved in other people's businesses, which meant I typically would work long hours. My first business that I raised money for, I was in my early 20s. And why do I tell you that? I tell you that because I worked from, let's say, 8 in the morning till 10 or 11 at night, 5-6 days a week. And at 52, I am acutely aware, painfully aware of what I was able to accomplish in my 20s versus what I can do now. Physically, I am unable to put in those kinds of hours. However, I have realized that I've been able to balance it with wisdom and experience, and I work smarter now than I worked then. So it balances out. But if I put in 6 days from 8 in the morning, just taking breaks for some lunch and dinner, till 10 or 11 at night, got up the next day and did it again, over and over and over again, I didn't think about it. It was nothing. In my 20s, no problem. In my 30s, things started to slow down a little bit. In my 40s, but now in my 50s, I'm acutely aware of the fact that if I do that for 3 days in a row, that fourth day, oh man, I'm in a fog. I need a little more sleep. I need a little more rest. I need more recuperation. Anyway, so later in life, when you find yourself having to start over, you say, good grief, I'm at the same position I was when I was in my early 20s. Actually, I'm in a worse position. And I don't have the same tool set or abilities as I had when I was in my 20s. How in the world am I going to get out of this? Not a good feeling. I'm sure many of you feel that way. So for me, I also realized something. And again, everyone's very different. I used to think that when it came to stress, I didn't have stress. People would talk about stress and that sort of thing. And I realized 3 different situations in my life. When I was in my 20s, I went to law school and I got a law degree. And I used to always joke because it's a lot of work. It's late nights. It's a lot of reading. It's just a different environment. I had a computer science degree. So I went from math and engineering essentially over to law. And let me tell you, those 2 disciplines are very different. When I was in law school, I used to think it was funny. Everyone would talk about how stressed out they are and how bothered they are. And I thought, well, I'm not stressed out at all. Well, I realized I like to go to the gym. I like to exercise, whatever that may be. And that kind of takes my stress out. But I also realized later in life, looking back, I lost all my hair in law school. Is there a direct correlation? I don't know. But I thought, maybe I take out my stress physically and I don't realize it. And then throughout life in stressful situations, I realize sometimes I will have, let's just say, gastrointestinal issues when I get stressed out. But I wasn't putting 2 and 2 together until I went through a divorce. And I'm about 210 pounds. And that's what now. And this is 6 years since the beginning of my divorce. And then I was about 210 pounds. As going through my divorce, I dropped to about 172 pounds. It's like 45 pounds, 45 pounds, and that wasn't all fat. I wasn't sleeping well. Looking back, I wasn't eating well. Matter of fact, I took the exact opposite eating approach. Instead of all my healthy stuff, sugar and coffee and all these other things, food-wise, completely changed. My diet changed. My exercise was non-existent. I lost all that, and I realized looking back, I take out stress. It manifests in me physically. Why do I bring that up? I bring that up to say that it's one thing to try to get out of debt in a bad financial situation. It's another thing to try to do it when you are, let's say, really stressed out, like I was going through divorce. Or maybe someone is physically ill, which makes much of life almost impossible if you've got a real sickness. I had a friend who went through cancer and chemotherapy, and he made it. One of the toughest people I know. Not only that, he was going through a divorce at the exact same time. So when you have all these outside influences, it makes the financial part so much more difficult. But it's something you just have to do and fight your way through, because interest doesn't stop accruing because you don't feel good. And whatever your situation, it makes it that much more difficult. So I can relate. So I'm going to walk through the financial part of this and where I found myself and how I got out of it. Again, hoping that you can relate and it can help you. At the same time, know that I was not in a good headspace during this period of time. So it was just made it much more difficult. Okay. So I want to talk about briefly, before I get to the debt and whatnot, my particular timeline. And I'm looking at my notes, so I'm going to be looking down. It was 2 years after she asked for divorce that we actually separated and sold the house. So 2 years of difficulty emotionally, right? And we signed what was a separation agreement. If you happen to go through divorce, I think separation agreements are a great idea. It just meant that if we could agree to everything, then at a date in the future, depending upon your state, you could just have the judge sign it and you were done. You said, look, we agreed to everything financially, kids, what you name it, and we're out. And then we had to stay apart for a year. You're separated before you got your final order. So all told, that was 6 years. So looking at my notes, I was 44 when she asked for divorce. I was 46 when we separated. And then I'm 52, so that's another 6 years since the actual separation. And when that happened, we have 3 children, which make it even more difficult, and that plays into the plan and what I'm going to show you here. because they were basically middle school or early high school because we had kids. So it's been 6 years that I've been, let's say, on my own, no longer married, having to make myself whole, starting from zero. And I'm almost there. All right, so like I said, I'm not going to edit this much. Let me talk about and set the stage for the financial part. I am someone who needs to make lists. I have to write things down. It helps me. Okay, so there's a home involved. There's cars. These are the major items when it comes to financially, retirement. In my situation, there were children, which meant there was college. And there was what I would just call savings, just to pay random bills. Okay, so if you look at these various items, in our case, we sold the home. So the home is gone. So I no longer have a home. What did I do? Well, I went out and rented a home, but I'll talk about that in a second. Cars. Well, of course, let's say you've got two and you both take cars. You've got retirement, college for children, savings, cars, and I should just left that like that, home. What's my point? Well, when I was in my 20s, as I am a planner, I say to myself, when I get to be about 50 or 60, I would like to have a house paid off. It's reasonable. It's a 30-year mortgage. Cars, we'd like to have cars paid off. You get more cars, you sell cars, you buy cars, you want to have those, get rid of those things. If you can get rid of those expenses, that's great because you want to be thinking about this. So you also save money over all of those years for retirement. Also, we were saving every month, as you probably will, for kids' college. Maybe to either help them with college or completely pay for college. Ideally, if you can get them through and they can come out without student loans, wonderful. That would make you feel good, at least for me. And then just some general savings to pay bills or maybe put a porch on the house, whatever you want to do. So all of this essentially goes away, right? Or at least half of it goes away. So in my situation, a home went away. Well, there's two cars. Well, they both had loans, so one went away from my perspective and one didn't. Retirement, well, that's completely gone now. It's basically cut in half, and we had more years to put money in. But as you know, if you have a larger sum of money, it compounds over time much faster. You break that down to almost nothing and not much. College, well, in my case, the college funding of the college accounts stopped, completely stopped, and that was going to be on me to figure out. And then, of course, savings, whatever money, it's all gone. Depends on the state you're in, but usually it's about half. Well, in my situation, and you might find yourself in a similar one, we had debts. And debts split as well. Lots of debts. Okay. So the first thing I did, and now we're going to get to the situation and how I organized it. I organized it first. Before I put together my plan to get out of debt, I said, what are my goals? My goals. Well, because it was a divorce, if you're just talking about getting out of debts and you're not in this situation, it'd be very different. But for me, one of my goals was I was very, very concerned about my kids. Divorce is no fun. And so I looked at that in terms of, let's just say, their experience or experiences. I'll talk about that in a second. Home, vacation. Okay, what do I mean by this? My first goal was kids. I wanted their life to change the least amount possible. I was able to rent a home that was the same floor plan, basically, almost, as the home they lived in. The bedroom situation was the same. I was very lucky. I was very blessed. Oftentimes you go through a divorce or something, you might have to go from one particular home to a different type of home, and it can be a dramatic change. So I tried my best, and I was lucky enough to get a very similar home so that it wasn't that big of a change. And I thought I want their experiences to kind of be the same, whether with them or with my ex or with me, in terms of getting together with family and things like that. And then I didn't want to, in my mind, right or wrong, I didn't want to rob them of a childhood. If we took a vacation a year, I wanted them to still have a vacation a year. That gets a lot harder because when you get divorced, if you had two incomes, you now have one income. You also theoretically have double the expenses. You can look at it one way or the other, because now you're solely responsible for everything. Nothing wrong and perfectly doable, but it can vastly change your, let's just say, standard of living. So how could I, and I just tried to do what I could to make this a priority or a goal. Okay, then my other goals, in no particular order, but there were debts, which we're going to talk about in a second. Then there's my retirement, which was basically back to zero. Then there's savings, cars, and then I actually had started my own business. So my goals were, and this is where I think it would help you to put down your goals. If you're in your 50s and you're thinking, well, a major goal for most people is I'd like to retire someday. So you got to think about, what am I going to do here? I just lost half or more of my retirement money. And I was expecting to be able to contribute more during the next, well, I was 44 at the time, 44, 46. So, I had another 56, 66, 20 years of adding money to a big pile, to a pile. So I thought I had 20 more years of putting money in. Now, on my own, if you have more expenses, you may not be able to contribute as much over those 20 years. And if you're starting back at zero, oh my gosh. And then there were debts. Okay? Basically no savings. Cars, I had kids. They're about to turn 16 in a couple years, so I needed to get something for them at least so they could do their extracurricular after-school activities. And then I had my own business, which happened to help. But I said, okay, I want to retire. I want my kids to have a better experience. I got to deal with things like the debts. These are the major financial issues. This is a financial issue too, right? Because college comes up here. So, let me get another color. When it came to college, right, that was going to be money every month I wanted to be able to put away. Debts, that's money every month. Of course, paying rent or a home, but that's going to happen no matter what. But I was renting, and I really wanted to own. Retirement, that's going to be money every month. Paying for cars, myself, theirs, insurance, trying to get some savings, and eventually having a home. So I had to say, I know what my goals are. Wow, now let's prioritize them. Let's prioritize these goals. Okay. In terms of where's the money going every single month? So now let's think of them in terms of goals that require finances. Okay, so for example, the kids' college funds, my retirement funds. Remember, this one had stopped, and that one had basically stopped in terms of contributing. The money didn't go away because it's in accounts for their benefit, yet the amount going in stopped, and it had another 6 to 9 years for my kids, which stopped. My retirement money going in stopped for the moment because I had to get my head on straight. I wanted to be able to have a home. Here's the thing. If you're in your 50s, do you want to get a 30-year mortgage? Meaning you're not going to pay it off till 80, which might guarantee you got to work forever? Not necessarily. I'm sorry. No, you don't want to do that. You may have to do that, but you don't want to do that. You could rent forever. That's not a problem. There's actually financial reasons to rent instead of buying, particularly in this crummy market. But, so kids, college, retirement, home, and then the big one. Debt. Now, first thing you got to do, I've got videos on this, is you got to make a budget. You got to know exactly how much money comes in, and you got to know exactly how much goes out for your basic expenses. We're just talking food and electricity, rent, whatever it may be. And also, once you've done that, then you have a general idea of how much you have left over every month. So, 2 ways to deal with the money. And you might have different situations if you have gone through a divorce in terms of where money goes and who it goes to. But essentially, if you make a certain income, right, and you have expenses, there's only two things you can do. You can either, get a raise or change your job to make your income go up. That would help, because then the delta between what comes in and what goes out grows and you've got more, or you need your expenses to go down. So one thing I did, I had my own business. So I was working hard to try to make more money. But the first thing I did was my expenses. And you got to take a hard look, because if you want to get out of debt, you need to put as much money to this as fast as you can. So this was my number one thing, because it was a lot. And I did a spreadsheet, and I realized that at a certain salary, I was never going to get out of this. It was a death spiral, meaning the debt was going to grow faster than I was going to be able to pay it down, such that it would get worse and worse and worse every year. A little worse every year, but over a long period of time, it ended in bankruptcy. So I said, okay, I'm not going to go work for someone else. So I took what little money I had and I happened to put it into my business. Everyone's got a different scenario. That allowed me to put as much as I possibly could during this time period in retirement. So I was trying to maximize this, because there's a lot you can do. Two things I learned: have a great accountant, find one, have one, ask around, have a great financial planner, if for no other reason than to bounce ideas off of, but to be able to maximize what you're able to earn, and to maximize things like deductions or whatever it may be. Get good financial advice. I'm not a financial planner. This is not financial advice. I'm just explaining my situation. Expenses down. Your life, if you've gone through a divorce, will change dramatically. Now, it doesn't have to, but if you want to do something like get out of debt, you're going to need to. So, for example, everyone's different. When I was younger, I used to always cut my own grass, and when we had kids, I cut my own grass. But at some point in time, when my kids got older, I loved the fact that I could coach their football or coach their soccer and go to all their events. But in order to do that, there were other things that I couldn't do or didn't have the time to do. So I paid someone to cut our grass, right? And let's just say that was $160 a month. We also, because we both worked, we also paid someone to clean the house. It's a good sized house. I don't know, $240 a month, $300 a month. I don't even remember. Okay. So I said when I moved, I have to do everything I can to put money over here. So it doesn't matter that this was cutting grass or this was doing a house. It might just be you spend a certain amount on clothes, you need to stop doing that. Or you eat out a certain amount, you stop doing that. I stopped doing that. There was no more eating out, going out to eat at restaurants. So cut my own grass. All right, well, that was once a week when the grass was growing fast for almost 2 hours. Great, but I'm doing that. Then there was cleaning the house. Well, that's not going to happen anymore. So every Saturday for 3 or more hours, it was clean every bathroom, clean the kitchen, vacuum, you name it. I'm doing that. Eating out, that sort of thing. Well, that went away, all that money. So I'm taking my budget. I'm trying to get rid of these things by doing a lot of it myself. And even the last one, I'll tell you, I was so determined that this was going away, because these other things are not going to happen at all if this doesn't go away, that I did something. For example, the kids spent time with me. They spent time with my ex. When they weren't with me, where we live, you can have basements. I know some areas you don't have basements. We have basements. When you have a basement, typically it's much cooler down there. So for 4 months in the summer, when it was incredibly hot, I would kill the air conditioning and sleep in the basement every night because it was cooler down there. And if I was at home working at all, I would work down in the basement. And that, believe it or not, that probably saved $120 or $140 during those super hot months. It was a $300 electric bill, and you cut it off for 2 weeks every month. You just took your $300 to $150, and then you can put that. So do whatever you can when it comes to getting rid of debt, knowing that you've got a plan, and you're going to start tackling your plan. And once those things go away, you can start adding things back to your life. This doesn't go on forever. May not. It may. Whatever, that's life, but possibly it doesn't. Okay, so let's talk about the most important part of this entire video, and that is the debt. because I'm not making progress at all unless those huge payments go away, particularly because if you watch my videos, you know how much interest eats up. Interest will eat up a lot. So let's just say on my debts I had credit card, credit card, credit card, credit card. Yeah, it was that bad. Personal loan, which was used to pay off prior credit cards. Of course, a car loan. Car was not paid off. That was number 5. Let's say that's number 6. And then tax. A couple things to take into consideration here. Let's see, is that everything debt-wise? Yeah. A couple things to take into consideration. First is when you're tackling debts, interest rate matters a lot. Okay? Whatever the highest interest rate is, let's just say, I think right now the average is like 24%. Okay, I think my car may have been, I don't know, let's say 8%. Personal loan may have been, let's say 12%. And then there was money owed tax. So first thing you want to do is tackle your highest interest rates. Maybe. There's another thing to think about. Over here we've got our interest rates. These are the highest interest rates. But let's talk about the pain that can be caused by these. What do I mean by that? If you don't pay a credit card, it's going to hurt your credit. But they're not going to come, they can't come to your house and remove your TV to pay your credit debt. So they can't, there's no collateral that was put up. If you don't pay your car loan, they can come and take your car away, right? They can repossess it. Personal loans may or may not have collateral. Again, it would just be a credit card hit. Tax, well, tax, if you owe tax, whether it's state or federal, that never goes away, even if you declare bankruptcy, I believe. I didn't declare bankruptcy, but that's my understanding. And there's a lot of things they can do in terms of getting at to assets or maybe taking your home or garnishing your wages, whatever that may be. So you've got two considerations. I would call it the pain, right? And then you've got the interest rates. And you got to balance these things. So for me, I said, this has to go first. I got to solve this first. Money goes to that first. I was most about pain. Then I said, okay, what about these things? Well, I'm not going to stop paying these. But how am I going to pay them off? And on my channel, I'm not just promoting my channel, I'm saying I've got many unique ways. And the reason you're going to find a lot of unique videos about getting out of debt, not just the, hey, make a higher payment. You're going to find things like, for example, I call up, I owe $12,000 on my car. They tell me it's worth $18,000. And I'm like, well, I want to refinance. My payment's $500 a month. I call up to refinance because I know that I've got 2 years left, let's say. But if I refinance for $5,000, maybe my payment will go from $500 down to, say, $200. And if that happens, I got another $300, and I can put that to a credit card. Great. I call up to refinance. Turns out they say, look, your car's worth more than you owe. We'll give you a higher loan than 12. Want to refinance? Sure. Well, why don't you refinance for 16? I'm like, well, what am I going to do with the extra 4? And then it dawned on me, oh, wait, I'm going to get an extra 4,000 at 8%? And then I'm going to take that 4,000? One of my cards was small. I literally took the money from a refinance and I paid off a credit card. It was a 24% credit card. It went away. And that 4,000 was now at 8%. I still owed the 4,000. But instead of being at 24, it was now at 8. To me, that's a huge win. And I didn't have to do anything. It's just because the car had a little more equity. And now I've got that 16 at 8%, but again, it was over 5 years. So it was a double whammy. I think my payment, let's just say it was $500. I'm just going to guess, let's say it went to $400. Because it was originally over $20,000, my loan. But so my loan payment went down, and I shifted debt from a high percentage rate to a lower percentage rate. There are a lot of unique ways, and when your back is up against the wall, and you're looking at having to start over at 50 years old, and you're basically less than broke, you're going to come up with some unique ways. You've got to think through what can you do. Then you start tackling these. And I'm going to tell you something that I did. And it all depends on your personality. Like I said, I make lists. I also need to feel like I'm making progress. And so through the divorce, it's always good if you've got a couple close friends that will just do nothing more than just listen to you, right? That you can call them at any time just to vent or talk or whatever. I did that, and I'm not even a talker. I don't like talking on the phone. As a matter of fact, I despise talking on the phone. I think it's very inefficient. I don't like it, but I did it when I wasn't feeling all that great. So here's what I did. This is a little trophy, and it's plastic. And I think it was $10 for like 12 of these on Amazon. And you can put a sticker on it. And I would put a sticker on it, and I would write, credit card Chase, $4,000. And I got all these little things, and I wrote down my debts. And I put them on the bottom shelf in my office, because I had multiple shelves. It's a psychological thing. When I paid one off, I would move it to the top shelf, or mid shelf, so I could see it. You know, when you go to a grocery store, you're going to see that the expensive cereal in the cereal aisle is at eye level. And the generic, less expensive cereal is down there at the bottom. Why? Because you're more inclined to go look at eye level and grab something. So they put the more expensive stuff up there. Psychologically, that's just where you look. And you might look at that and say, oh, well, that's the generic. It's not as good because it's down there. So I put all my debts down at the bottom, and I got excited when I got to move it to eye level. And then I would call up one of my buddies who we lived nearby, and we would go out to dinner. Now, you're probably thinking you don't need to be buying food at restaurants, but it wasn't that often. It was a big deal to pay off like a credit card. And so we would go out, get a steak, get potatoes, and celebrate. My good friend would celebrate with me a win, this little thing. So for me, that made a difference. I crossed this thing off. Yes, this is daunting, and yes, this is going to take now almost 6 years. That's how bad it was. Because again, had to get car insurance for the kids and a car for the kids and get them into college. And I've got 3, and thankfully 1 is out of college. 1 is getting his master's right now, and the 3rd is in his 2nd year. I wasn't able to pay completely. They had to take some loans, but not a lot. But between me, loans, and what was in their college fund, we've been able to work it out because I planned it out. I had a spreadsheet. I'm just putting it on a whiteboard. But as you can imagine, you're going to want to put things in spreadsheets. You're going to want to put down how much you're paying on each. You want to see, if you can start cutting your own grass, and you save that $160, and you go, oh yeah, this credit card payment's $500. But now it's going to be $660 because I'm going to add that $160. And then you put it in the calculator and you say, I'm going to pay this off 2 years earlier. Win. That's the kind of stuff you do. And then you look at things like, I would use credit cards to pay for things, not because I was going to keep a balance, but when I had an open one, and it was a cashback card, I could use the cashback to help pay balance or for other things. Anyway, you do as many unique things as you can. And try to set yourself up with a plan. I find that anxiety, for me, comes from the unknown. And if I have a plan of what I'm going to do, and how much I'm going to pay, and the things I'm going to try to save money on, whatever it is, then I look at that plan and I say, I have a plan. And then I can sleep at night. I don't have the anxiety. And then when I start hitting these goals, I feel like I'm making progress. There's no worse feeling than the feeling of being in a debt spiral where you see that there's no way out. So you got to come up with a plan to be able to get yourself a way out. And if you've got a good financial advisor or an accountant, you can run it by them, or maybe a family member that's good with finances, and say and get feedback. What do you think of this? Maybe there might be things you didn't think about, like the car thing. Like, where should your payments go? If you got 3 left and this is 20% and this is 18 and this is 9, well, you're going to be going for the 20%. And then when this is paid, you're going to take that money and throw it down here. You're going to use that avalanche method or the snowball method or whatever method works best for you. I've got online calculators to do that. As I mentioned, I feel like my kids are almost done, out on their own. One's out working, the other 2 are working, but, when they're done with college. So that was a big one for me. My retirement, I worked hard in my business. I worked, again, 6 days a week, all day, every day when I didn't have the kids. I wasn't doing anything but working for many, many years. so that I could put as much into retirement as possible, which I've been able to do, and able to save money now and start investing that money, pay off cars and cars for the kids. And now the last thing for me is a home, possibly be able to purchase one, depending upon what I get, and maybe not even have a mortgage if my savings and investments go the way I think they might go. None of this, so I got my number one priority. I got my future, my number two priority. And then these things just make this easier. So kids first, me, Brian, second. And these things, depending upon how they go, can help that. So I hope this video was helpful for those of you that find yourself in a horrible financial situation, whether it came from a divorce or not, or for those who are going through a divorce or have been through a divorce. I understand. I hope me explaining my situation makes you realize that it happens to a lot of people, and in life there are things that are not in your control. Stats show that 50% of marriages end up in divorce. And when I was younger, I thought, well, I'll never get divorced because I don't believe in divorce. I'm not going to get a divorce. So I'm not worried about that. Well, then it didn't dawn on me, because I was young and dumb, that if the other person asks for a divorce, there's nothing you can do about that. So there are things in life you can't control, and you just got to get over it. But I spent 2 or 3 years in a bad headspace, and it took a long time to get out of that. Family, friends, lean on them, accountants, financial advisors, professionals, lean on them, organize your thoughts, put out your goals, put out your plan, do something to celebrate your wins, and start knocking those things down. And if you feel as though you want it to end in a year, first of all, you don't want to be back at zero, but you're back at zero. You want it to end in a year. At least for me, it didn't end in a year. Like I said, it's been 6 years after divorce. I've been divorced for 6 years. And I'm just now getting my head above water on all of these issues. And it feels great. I'm in a better position now than I've ever been in my entire life. But it didn't just happen. I had to force it to happen. I hope this video helps you. I hope you realize that other people have gone through this. And I'm sure millions, if not tens of millions, have gone through this before me. And you're going to get through it, but you got to work at it. And whether it be accountants or financial advisors or videos like that people put out like me on how to help you get out of credit card debt or house debt or car debt, whatever it may be, do as much homework as you can, because the only person that is going to get you in better financial shape is you. It's on you. It always has been. It always will be. Do everything you can. So I hope this video helps you. Please do subscribe to my channel and take a look at the videos. And I hope they can help you. And if you've been a subscriber or you're considering subscribing, at least now you know why I put those videos together. It wasn't because I woke up and said, I think I'll make some finance videos on getting out of debt. It was, oh my gosh, I've spent 6 years doing this for myself, with my back up against the wall, having nothing, hoping and praying that I could get a light at the end of the tunnel. And I was able to do that. If I can do it, you can too. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. I hope you're able to get out of your issues and your financial issues, whatever it is. God bless you. Good luck.